Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishikam Vitam Sya Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyana Jana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bhistam Supurakam Guraganara Sisha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanagam Govindabhidam Ujjvalam Bharatanam Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwa Gurun Shah Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pradam Devam Divyatanam Suchandavanam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadekavaranam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Vandetam Shivaram Marika Sharanam Nyashishvara Sridharam Vanshakaupatarubhyasya kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pranayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratabhishe Namah. So we're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Madhya-lila Chapter 2, the ecstatic manifestations of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Vichedesmin Prabhur Antya-lila Sutranuvarnane Gaurasya Krishna Vicheda Pralapadi Anuvarnyate. So this is verse number 1. While relating in synopsis form the last division of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this chapter I shall describe the Lord's transcendental ecstasy, which appears like madness due to his separation from Krishna. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaurabhakta Vrinda. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Advaita Chandra, and all glories to all the devotees of the Lord. Sesha Jay Rohila Prabhur Dwarasha Vatsar Krishnera Viyoga Svorte Hoy Nirantar. During his last 12 years, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always manifested all the symptoms of ecstasy and separation from Krishna. Shri Radhikara Cheshta Jena Udava Darshane Emata Dasha Prabhur Hoy Ratridine. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's state of mind, day and night, was practically identical to Radharani's state of mind when Uddhava came to Vrindavan to see the gopis. Nirantara hoy Prabhur Viraha Unmada Brahmamoy Cheshta Sada Pralapamoy Vada. The Lord constantly exhibited a state of mind reflecting the madness of separation. All his activities were based on forgetfulness, and his talks were always based on madness. Roma Kupe Raktogama Danta Sabhale Shane Anga Kinahoy Kane Anga Fule. Blood flowed from all the pores of his body, and all his teeth were loosened. At one moment his whole body became slender, and at another moment his whole body became fat. Gambira bitare ratre nahi nidra lab, bite mukha shira goshe katahoy sab. The small room beyond the corridor is called the Gambir. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to stay in that room, but he did not sleep for a moment. At night he used to grind his teeth and head on the wall, and his face sustained injuries all over. Tindvare kapata prabhu Jajena Bahire, Kabu Sima Dware Pare, Kabu Sindunire. Although the three doors of the house were always closed, the Lord would nonetheless go out and sometimes would be found at the Jagannath temple before the gate known as Simadwar, and sometimes the Lord would fall flat into the sea. Chatak Parvata Deki, Govardhana Brahme, Naya Chale, Artanad, Korea Krandane. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would also run very fast across the sand dunes, mistaking them for Govardhan. As he ran, he would wail and cry loudly. Because of the winds of the sea, sometimes the sand would form dunes. Such sand dunes are called Chatak Parvat. Instead of seeing these sand dunes simply as hills of sand, the Lord would take them to be Govardhan hills. Sometimes he would run towards these dunes at high speed, crying very loudly, expressing the state of mind exhibited by Radharani. Thus Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and his pastimes. His state of mind brought him the atmosphere of Vrindavan and Govardhan Hill, and thus he enjoyed the transcendental bliss of separation and meeting. Upavano Dhyana Deki Vrindavana Gyan Tahanjai Nache Gaya Kane Morcha Jan. Sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mistook the small parks of the city for Vrindavan. Sometimes he would go there, dance and chant, and sometimes fall unconscious in spiritual ecstasy. So small parks means like gardens. In places they have gardens and trees. Because it's not like today where everything's developed, but there would be places, and then Mahaprabhu would go in those places among the trees and plants and feel like he was in Vrindavan. Kahana he shunije bhavera bikar se bhava hoye prabhur sharire prachar. The extraordinary transformations of the body due to transcendental feelings would never have been possible for anyone but the Lord, in whose body all transformations were manifested. The ecstatic manifestations of the body described in such exalted literatures as the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu are practically not seen in this material world. However, these symptoms were perfectly present in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These symptoms are indicative of Mahabhava, or the highest ecstasy. Sometimes sahajiyas artificially imitate these symptoms, but experienced devotees reject such imitations immediately. The author admits herein that these symptoms are not to be found anywhere but in the body of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, what will be here described in this chapter, and also in the form of some here we're reading verses, and then there are parts of the chapter which are in pure Bengali poetry, like stanzas of poetry. So there's a very high subject matter, but this is giving some indication of where Mahaprabhu was at during the last 12 years of his time in Jagannath Puri, which is his final years. So we're reading this, and Srila Prabhupada, he'll give some commentary in the verses, but these are some very exalted and high things. We'll just hear them. So that's what's coming in this chapter. Hastapadera sandisam vitasti brahmane sandichadi binahoye varna charma rahistane. The joints of his hands, the joints of his hands and legs would sometimes become separated by 8 inches, and they remain connected only by the skin. Okay.
Please, Maharaj, can you turn the microphone on, please? They're not hearing the class.
Oh, Maybe I forgot to click it on. Yeah, I did. Hasta padera sandhi sab vitasti pramane sandhi chari bina hoye charma rohistane. The joints of his hands and legs would sometimes become separated by 8 inches, and they remain connected only by the skin. Hastapara shirasab sharira bitare pravishta hoy kurma rupa dekiye prabhure. Sometimes Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's hands, legs, and head would all enter within his body, just like the withdrawn limbs of a tortoise. Ematad bhuta bhava sharire prakash manate shunyata bhakye haha hutash. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to manifest wonderfully ecstatic symptoms. His mind appeared vacant, and there were only hopelessness and disappointments in his words. So certainly these are the ecstatic symptoms that Mahaprabhu would experience in his later years, the last 12 years. He experienced so many ecstatic symptoms and manifested them, and would, it is said that separation, in separation, Mahaprabhu was like simultaneously drinking nectar, or the Amrita refers to the nectar of immortality, drinking nectar, and at the same time, sometimes the separation would be like poison. So it was simultaneously these different symptoms and these different qualities, and so it's the subject matter is very particular to Mahaprabhu in his later years. And as I said before, the Madhya-lila covers like 25 chapters, and that's 6 years of Mahaprabhu's travels to South India, to be in Jagannath Puri, to be in Vrindavan and different places, and like that. Sometime even Bengal, and that's the most extensive part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and yet that would be corresponding to his the first, after he takes sannyas, the first 6 years, and then the later 24 minus 6, the later 18 years, 6 of them he's doing Sankirtan and he's chanting with the devotees. But the last 12 years are these Mahaprabhu's deep absorption in ecstasy. And those that's you can say the basis of the Antya-lila, which is presented here. And the Antya-lila is actually less chapters or smaller than the Madhya-lila. Madhya-lila is the most extensive part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ematad bhuta bhava sharire prakash manete sanyas bhakye aha hutash. In this way, Mahaprabhu used to manifest wonderful ecstatic symptoms. His mind appeared vacant, and there were only hopelessness and disappointment in his words. Kahan mora prananata mora libaran, kahan karon kahan pan brajendra nandan. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to express his mind in this way: where is the Lord of my life who is playing his flute? What shall I do now? Where should I go to find the son of Maharaj Nanda? Kahare kahiba keba janimora duk brajendra nandana binu fate morabuk. To whom should I speak? To whom should I speak? Who can understand my disappointment? Without the son of Nanda Maharaj, my heart is broken. Of course, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is Krishna. And this what's being expressed by Mahaprabhu, that he is feeling this, he is feeling the separation of Radharani, which is called Mahabhava. It's not possible for any other human being. But he's feeling the Mahabhava that Radharani felt after Krishna left Vrindavan, the separation. Imata vilapakore vivala antar, rayaranataka shloka parinirantar. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always expressed bewilderment In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always expressed bewilderment and lamented in separation from Krishna. At such times, he used to recite the shlokas from Ramananda Roy's drama known as Jagannath Vallabha Natika. Premacheda rujo vagachati harir nayam na cha premava stanastanam avaiti napi marana janati no durbalaha anyo veda nachanya dukam akilam no jivanam vashravam dvitrani eva dinani yovanam idam hahavide kagatihi. Srimati Radharani used to lament, our Krishna does not realize what we have suffered from injuries inflicted in the course of loving affairs. We are actually misused by love because love does not know where to strike and where not to strike. Even Cupid does not know of our very much weakened condition. What should I tell anyone? No one can understand another's difficulties. Our life is actually not under our control. For youth will remain for 2 or 3 days and soon be finished. In this condition, O Creator, what will be our destination? Creator is Bide. So, this verse is from the Jagannath Vallabha Natika of Ramananda Roy. Now what follows here is, this is some pretty deep Bengali poetry, which goes along with the Mahaprabhu's feelings when he's reciting that verse. Upajila premam kura bangila je duka pura Krishna taha nahi koreban bahire nagara raj bitare shatera kaj Paranari Bades Sabadan. Srimati Radharani spoke thus, in distress due to separation from Krishna. Oh, what shall I say of my distress? After I met Krishna, my loving propensity sprouted, but upon separating from him, I sustained a great shock, which is now continuing like the sufferings of a disease. The only physician for this disease is Krishna himself, but he is not taking care of this sprouting plant of devotional service. What can I say about the behavior of Krishna? Outwardly, he is a very attractive young lover, but at heart, he is a great cheat, very expert in killing others' wives. Not so funny, but it's very deep things expressed. Saki he na bujiye bidira bidan, shukalage koilun prita, hoila duka viparita, ebijaina rahe paran. Srimati Radharani continued lamenting about the consequences of loving Krishna. My dear friend, I do not understand the regulative principles given by the Creator. I love Krishna for happiness, but the result was just the opposite. I'm now in an ocean of distress. It must be that now I'm going to die, for my vital force no longer remains. This is my state of mind. Kutila prema age jana nahi jani stana stana balomanda nare bicharite krura shatera guna dore hate gale Bande more raki jache nare mukashite. By nature, loving affairs are very crooked. They are not entered with sufficient knowledge, nor do they consider whether a place is suitable or not, nor do they look forward to the results. By the ropes of his good qualities, Krishna, who is so unkind, has bound my neck and hands, and I am unable to get relief. Obviously, these verses are very intense. What can I say? Jay Marana Tanuhina Para Drohe Paravina Panchabana Sande Anukan Abalara Sharire Bindi Koila Jarajare Dukadeyana Loy Jivan. In my loving affairs there is a person named Madan. His qualities are thus. Personally, he possesses no gross body, means he doesn't have a body. Yet he is very expert in gaining and giving pain to others. He has 5 arrows, and fixing them on his bow, he shoots them into the bodies of innocent women. Thus these women become invalids. It would be better if he took my life without hesitation, but he does not do so. He simply gives me pain. Anjare je dukamane, anyetaha nahijane, satya e, shastrara bichare, anya jana, kahangike najanaye, pranasaki, jate kohe, darya darivare. In the scriptures it is said that one person can never know the unhappiness in the mind of another. Therefore, what can I say of my dear friends Lalita and the others? Nor can they understand the unhappiness within me. They simply try to console me, repeatedly saying, "Dear friend, be patient." So, these are the sentiments of Srimati Radharani, which Mahaprabhu is feeling very deeply. Krishna Kripa Paravar Kabu Kori Bena Angikar Sakitora Evyarta Vachan Jivara Jivana Chanchal Jena Padma Patrera Jal Tattadina Jive Kunjan. I say, my dear friends, you are asking me to be patient, saying that Krishna is an ocean of mercy and that sometime in the future he will accept me. However, I must say that this will not console me. A living entity's life is very flickering. It is like water on the leaf of a lotus flower. Who will live long enough to expect Krishna's mercy? Shatavatsara Parjanta Jivana Anta Ebakyakaha Navichari Naryara Jovanadan Jari Krishna Koriman Se Jovana Dina Duichari. A human being does not live more than 100 years. You should also consider that the youthfulness of a woman, which is the only attraction for Krishna, remains for only a few days. Agni Chaiche Nijadam Dekaya Abhiram Patangire Akarshya Mare Krishna Aiche Nija Guna Dekaya Hariman Pacheduka Samudre Tedare. If you say that Krishna is an ocean of transcendental qualities and therefore must be merciful someday, I can only say that he is like fire which attracts moths by its dazzling brightness and kills them. Such are the qualities of Krishna. By showing us his transcendental qualities, he attracts our minds, and then later, by separating from us, he drowns us in an ocean of unhappiness. Eta eteka vilapa kore vishade Sri Gorahari Udgadiya Dukera Kapata Bhavera Taranga Bole Nana Rupe Manachale Ara Ek Shloka Koila Pata. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lamented in a great ocean of sadness, and thus he opened the doors of his unhappiness. Forced by the waves of ecstasy, his mind wandered over transcendental mellows. What's here? Monet. His mind wandered over transcendental mellows, and he recited another verse as follows. So, in other words, he's feeling different. Mahaprabhu is feeling different moods, okay? Sri Krishna Rupani Nishevanam Vina Vyartani Mehani Akilendriyani Yalam Pashana Shuskendana Barakani Aho Bibarmiva Tane Katam Hata Trapaha. My dear friends, unless I serve the transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna, all my days and all my senses will become entirely useless. Now I am uselessly bearing the burden of my senses, which are like stone blocks and dried wood. I do not know how long I will be able to continue without shame. So obviously, what's being expressed here is extremely high. I mean, it's so high, someone can say, well, why are you reading this? You know, it's beyond our capacity to be able to, you know, to hear such exalted topics. But I would just say, well, I'm not going to skip over any part of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'm going to read it as it's given here by Krishna das Kaviraj Goswami, chapter after chapter, shloka after shloka. That's the way I'm doing it. And if in the course of reading we come into some very, very exalted or very high topics, I'm going to read them. And although I'm totally unqualified to do so, but I'll do that anyway. And, because I'm reading this literature from cover to cover, so to speak. Huh?
Those verses that you just read, where were those verses from?
Well, they're from, actually those verses are from Krishna das Kaviraj. The first verse is the first verse which triggered Mahaprabhu's sentiments is when he's hearing a verse from Ramananda Roy's drama known as Jagannath Vallabha Natika, and that was the verse where Srimati Radharani used to lament and expresses these feelings, but then subsequently the following verses, which we're hearing now, the first verse by Jagannath Vallabha Natika is in Sanskrit, I believe. And the verses that we're hearing now is Bengali poetry, which is from Krishna das Kaviraj, and he's expressing the mood of Mahaprabhu during his final years and how Mahaprabhu would react. And so it goes back and forth. Sometimes there's Sanskrit verse, and then what follows in Mahaprabhu's, you could say, reflections upon that verse. Okay. Etika vilapa kori vishade Shri Gorahari Udgadiya Dukera Kapata Bhavera Taranga Bole Nana Rupe Manachale Ara Ek Shlokak Koilapata. In this way, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu lamented in a great ocean of sadness, and thus he opened the doors of his unhappiness. Forced by the waves of ecstasy, his mind wandered over transcendental mellows, and he recited another verse as follows. So this verse, this next verse, is again in Sanskrit. So let's see. Conceive. Here. Okay, I don't know where the next verse is from it, but it's in. This verse is in Sanskrit, and then what follows was Mahaprabhu's, reaction to that verse or something. or this verse, you can say, presents in Sanskrit what Mahaprabhu will express in his feelings and words. Sri Krishna, forced by the waves of ecstasy, Mahaprabhu's mind wandered over transcendental melts, and he recited another verse as follows. I don't know where this verse is from, but it's in Sanskrit. Shri Krishna Rupadi Nishevanam Bina Yartani Me Hani Akilendriyanyalam Pashana Shuskindana Babarakaniyaho Bibarmiva Natani Katam Hatatrapaha. My dear friends, unless I serve the transcendental form, qualities, and pastimes of Sri Krishna, all my days and all my senses will become entirely useless. Now I'm uselessly bearing the burden of my senses, which are like stone blocks and dried wood. I do not know how long I will be able to continue without shame. And then we go back to the Bengali poetry here. I'm just explaining the structure of this chapter. Vamshi Ganamrita Dhamma Lavanyamrita Janmastan Jaina Dekina Chandavadana Senayane Kiba Kaja Padukatara Munde Baja Senayana Rohikikaran. Of what use are the eyes of one who does not see the face of Krishna, which resembles the moon and is the birthplace of all beauty and the reservoir of the nectarian songs of his flute? Oh, let a thunderbolt strike one's head. Why does one keep such eyes? The moonlight face of Krishna is the reservoir of nectarian songs and the abode of his flute. It is also the root of all bodily beauty. The gopis think that if their eyes are not engaged in seeing the beautiful face of Krishna, it would be better for them to be struck by a thunderbolt. For the gopis, to see anything but Krishna is uninteresting and indeed detestable. The gopis are never pleased to see anything but Krishna. The only solace for their eyes is the beautiful moonlight face of Krishna, the wonderful object of all senses. When they cannot see the beautiful face of Krishna, they actually see everything as vacant, and they desire to be struck by a thunderbolt. They do not find any reason to maintain their eyes when they are bereft of the beauty of Krishna. So this is an explanation by Srila Prabhupada. Saki he shunamora hatabidi bal morabapu chitaman sakala indriyagan Krishna binu sakala vipal. My dear friends, please hear me. I have lost all providential strength. Without Krishna, my body, consciousness, and mind, as well as all my senses, are useless. Krishnera Madhurabani Amritara Tarangini Tara Krishnera Madhurabani Amritara Tarangini Tara Pravesh Nahi Jai Shravane Kanakadi Chidrasam Janiya Se Shravan Tara Janma Hoila Akarane. Topics about Krishna are like waves of nectar. If such nectar does not enter one's ear, the ear is no better than the hole of a damaged conch shell. Such an ear is created for no purpose. Krishnera Adaramrita Krishna Guna Charitra. No, Krishnera Adaramrita Krishna Guna Charita Shudashar Swara Vinidan Taraswara Jaina Jane Janmiyana Moila Kene Se Rasana Beka Jiva Sam. The nectar from the lips of Lord Krishna and his transcendental qualities and characteristics surpass the taste of the essence of all nectar, and there is no fault in tasting such nectar. If one does not taste it, One should die immediately after birth, and his tongue is to be considered no better than the tongue of a frog. Why is the curtains being opened and closed so much?
Prabhu put the garlands on the Lord, and now Prabhu is offering the breakfast offering.
Okay, then. Okay, but then they should have just been kept closed the whole time. Mrigamara Nilotpal Milane Jay Parimal Jay Hare Tara Garvaman Hena Krishna Anga Ganda Jarana He Se Sambanda Se Na Nasha Bastrara Saman. One's nostrils are no better than the bellows of a blacksmith if one has not smelled the fragrance of Krishna's body, which is like the aroma of musk combined with that of the bluish lotus flower. Indeed, such combinations are actually defeated by the aroma of Krishna's body. Okay. One thing I've kind of felt about reading this kind of very high expressions, personally I could say that, well, one cannot really understand this or enter into this unless one is freed of all kinds of anarthas, all kinds of what's the word for anarthas? Anarthas means not of free of, unless one is free of all kinds of material attractions, vices, etc., all these things that we don't want to have. One has them. One cannot really enter into the plane of understanding this literature. And those who try to do so, we call them sahajias. So, and certainly I would say I'm not free from, I feel personally I'm not free from vice and from all kinds of material attractions and so many bad qualities. Then I cannot say, how can I understand or appreciate these exalted sentiments? But I do, and I can only say that just like on a veena, musical instrument, there are some strings that are not played, but they're they vibrate just to be like other strings, like the strings that are played, and then there are some strings that are not played, but they vibrate and they add to the tone. So something may vibrate or something within one's existence when one hears these sentiments, because if nothing else, they express something very beautiful. And also, somebody can react even to, as Srila Sridhar Maharaj, people can react to the Ramayana when they hear about Sita and her difficulties and what she goes through. They can react and feeling very sorrowful by hearing this, because just like people could react to a sad movie or something like that. Just people react in a way that it can trigger some kind of emotion in them or some kind of feeling. So, like that. Okay. Krishna Kara Paratala Koti Chandra Shushitala Tarasparsha Jaina Sparsha Mani Tarasparsha Nahijar Se Jok Charakar Se Vapu Loha Samajani. The palms of Krishna's hands and the soles of his feet are so cool and pleasant that they can be compared only to the light of millions of moons. One who has touched such hands and feet has indeed tasted the effects of touchstone. If one has not touched them, his life is spoiled and his body is like iron. Okay. Now here it says, if one has not touched them, his life is spoiled and his body is like iron. But I would say the mood expressed here is that of Radharani and the gopis. So I would, just personally, I would have edited this to say, one who has touched such hands and feet has indeed tasted the effects of touchstone. If one has not touched them, one's life is spoiled and one's body is like iron. I wouldn't express it with his, because I think what's being expressed the sentiments of Srimati Radharani, but his is general, just like, just like in Spanish. In Spanish, if we were talking about sons and daughters of somebody, one's children, we would say sus hijos. Now, hijo itself means a male, and hija means a female. But when we express male and female together, then we say hijos, which somebody could say, oh, that means just males. No, it means both. It means both. So in this case, if one has not touched them, his life is spoiled and his body is like ours. So in that case, we would say his can refer to both male and female, because we can say it's like a collective, whatever the word is for that. And a collective, is it something that shows possession? I don't know what particle, what piece of, what grammar thing it is, I did study grammar, but don't ask me what it means. Kore eta vilapan Prabhu Sachinandan Udgadiya Hridayera Shok Doinya Nirveda Vishade Hridayera Abasade Punarapi Pade Arashlok. Lamenting in this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu opened the doors of grief within his heart. Morose, humble, and disappointed, he recited a verse again and again with a despondent heart. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the word doinya, humility, is explained as follows. When unhappiness, fearfulness, and the sense of having offended combine, one feels condemned. This sense of condemnation is described as dinata, humility. When one is subjected to such humility, one feels physically inactive, one apologizes, and one's consciousness is disturbed. One's mind is also restless, and many other symptoms are visible. The word nirveda is also explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One may feel unhappiness and separation, as well as jealousy and lamentation due to not discharging one's duties. The despondency that results is called nirveda. When one is captured by this despondency, thoughts, tears, loss of bodily luster, humility, and heavy breathing result. Vishad is also explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When one fails to achieve one's desired goal of life and repents for all one's offenses, there is a state of regret called Vishada. The symptoms of Avasada are also explained. One hankers to revive one's original condition and inquires how to do so. There are also deep thought, heavy breathing, crying and lamentation, as well as a changing of the bodily color and drying up of the tongue. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, 33 such destructive symptoms are mentioned. They're expressed in words, in the eyebrows, and in the eyes. These symptoms are called vyabhichari bhava, destructive ecstasy. If they continue, they are sometimes called sanchari, or continued ecstasy. So this is a description, and these, Prabhupada's commentary. It's all obviously what's described here, quoting the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is, I'll just say in general, beyond our comprehension. It's beyond our comprehension, these kind of sentiments, but these are the qualities and symptoms, sentiments, ecstasies felt by someone who's very deeply absorbed in separation. We can say the union and separation. What's the word again? We say it all the time. The word for separation is?
Vipravam.
Vipralamba, exactly. Very good. Vipralamba. That is what's being expressed here. Vipralamba, Mahaprabhu's deep feelings of separation. So I'm going to stop here. Sometimes reading this is like, these things are so, these symptoms, and they go on, this chapter goes on, these symptoms are so deep that you can read and express, but it's like tasting something that's very condensed, very condensed. This is what's being described is in the form of shlokas, but Krishna das Kaviraj would also say about some of the shlokas expressed there like sutras. They're like condensations presented in a verse so that you can, like a resume or a synopsis is the word that was used at the beginning. A synopsis of what Mahaprabhu's feeling 24 hours of the day. So obviously what you get here is a synopsis, and it's deeply concentrated, just like when there's some things that you make, like when they make burfi here. It has milk and sugar, and certainly no one's going to just, in general, drink just milk with sugar in it, a lot of sugar. Most people are not going to drink that. But when it's cooked down, it becomes more and more and more condensed. In fact, that example is given in describing these things when it's talked about. Actually, that analogy is given about how to make sugar, how sugar is refined. It starts with sugar cane juice, and then it's cooked down, and then it becomes gur, or what we would call molasses, and then from there it's further, and then it becomes, unrefined sugar, and then it becomes sugar, and then it will continue to crystallize and form big crystals, and all the stages of the development of ecstasy are also compared to how sugar is made more and more condensed. And, those crystals, those crystals of sugar, I remember there's one product in India sold of crystallized sugar, but it's from palm, some kind of date palms, and that date palms is made into different sweets like sandesh. But that date palm, they also sell one product that's just completely crystallized date palm sugar, and I wonder if that is very sweet. I think it is. I think it's very sweet, but they sell it as a candy. Not to be taken by diabetics, I would think. Yeah. All right, so now, and that burfi is cooked down, and it's offered, and it's very, very tasty, a very tasty thing. In India, they sell many kinds of burfi, but very famous one is kaju burfi. Kaju burfi is cashew burfi, and it's sold in little diamond shapes with some silver foil, like thin silver foil, which you eat also along with that on the top, and it's sold like flat diamonds of this burfi. So that's what Bengal is also famous for. Bengal is famous for sweets. They have sweet shops, and what they do with what they do with sweets is unimaginable. The kinds of sweets they sell. What is that word? Kadam? They sell some sweets that are milk sweets, which on the outside are there's a thin layer which is not hard but there, and then has maybe some, and then on the inside it's liquid. Many.
Those that are rasgullas on the inside, and then they have a coating on the outside, so they're kind of hard on the outside, and then they have the rasgulla on the inside. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, I remember that when it says, when Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, there is a person who's the barber, and he cuts Mahaprabhu's hair, and he's very stricken by having to cut Mahaprabhu's hair, beautiful hair. In fact, he's so psychologically affected, but that afterwards he refuses ever to be a barber again or ever to cut anybody else's hair. So what does he do? He becomes a Bengali sweet maker. All right. So Bengalis are famous as sweet makers. Hari Harai Nama Krishna Jarabhaya Nama Hari Harai Ma Krishna Jarabhaya Nama Jarabhaya Marabhaya Keshavaya Nama Jarabhaya Marabhaya Keshavaya Nama Gopa Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Garadhara Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Garadhara Shiva Sari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunan Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhakta Raghunan Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunan Shri Jiva Bhatta Saragunath Hey Chai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Hey Chai Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jaoite Vignana Shabisha Puran Jaoite Vignana Shabisha Puran Hey Chai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Hey Chai Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasavar Pada Renu Mora Panchagras Tasavar Pada Renu Panchagras Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanibas Charame Chaname More Abhilas Charame Chaname More Abhilas Hey Chai Gosai Jabe Braje Kolabas Hey Chai Gosai Jabe Braje Kolabas Radha Krishna Antya-lila Korila Prakash Radha Krishna Antya-lila Korila Prakash Anande Bolo Hari Bacha Vrindavan Anande Bolo Bacha Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Majayaman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Jayaman Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriya. Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koriya. Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Naradhamudar. Hare Nam Kirtana Kohe Naradhamudar. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Ju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmamacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sarashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakakshidhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sunanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhakta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopal Bhadda Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Premsi Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Krishna das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Vishvavaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Kushamashra Maharaj Ki Jai. Srila Bhakti Tilak Niriya Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Navadip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Ki Jai. Saparshada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saparshada Shriman Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Koladvip Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram Ki Jai. Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Madharani Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopika Vardhan, Shyam Kuna Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju Ki Jai, Shri Purushottam Dham Ki Jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Ju Ki Jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya, Shri Nrsimha Dev Ki Jai, Bhakta Prabhara, Shri Prahlad Maharaj Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, all the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
Bhakti Pavan Janardan Maharaj.